10 years ago, Carte Blanche brought you the story of Chris Corlett's battle against leukemia.
Obviously, I was scared of death because you hear the word cancer, you hear the word leukemia, and you immediately think death. I know that's one of the first thoughts that I had was, am I going to die?
But the death of her son was not part of Tina Buerta's plan. She had no idea back then that her efforts to save Chris and find him a bone marrow donor would lead to her helping hundreds of other families in years to come.
I suppose by nature, my whole life, I've been a difficult person. I've been a fighter. I've never really taken no for an answer. So maybe it was just in my nature to, when I was told that there were hardly any donors on the registry and there was nothing we could do, I've never taken to there's nothing we can do. There's always something you can do.
Finding donors is critical, but the odds of finding a perfect match are 1 in 100,000, so the more people available on the registry, the better the chance for life. When Chris fell ill, there were only 800 South Africans listed and no one matched. Eventually a donor came forward, and by the time we met Chris and his family, he had already had 2 transplants.
Without a donor, you have no hope, because you can have the best doctor in the world, the best facilities in the world, you can have all the money in the world, but if you haven't got a donor, you've got nothing.
After the second transplant, it looked like Chris was on the road to recovery.
So you came home believing everything was fine, it was over?
It was over. I was happy. I knew that in a couple of weeks from now, I'd be able to start a normal life again.
But a year later, when Tina thought they had cheated death, a routine blood test changed everything.
And I had to be somewhere, and I actually said to them, I'll phone you just now for the results. And they said, no, wait, Prof wants to see you. And I knew.
Chris had relapsed. Either he had weeks to live, or he could try for a 3rd transplant.
I don't know, some people probably think I'm out of my mind going for 3 transplants, but it's either that or a possible 3 weeks of living. And 3 weeks it's not worth it to just give up. So I'm gonna do it again.
3 months later, in August of 2000, we were at the hospital when Chris tried one last time. The chemotherapy was taking its toll.
I'd say this is probably it. I don't think I'd want to do it again.
It's still a chance, whereas without it, there's no chance.
Lying in bed, nauseous and in a lot of pain, Chris picked up a paintbrush and he painted a sunflower. Little did anyone know that years later, the sunflower would come to represent something far greater than a simple painting.
For him, it was a symbol of hope. And for some reason, people faced with life-threatening illnesses at different stages have painted or done something with sunflowers. Maybe it's just that symbol of hope, that it follows the light. We don't know.
While the transplant was underway, his school, family and friends prayed for success. But it was not to be. His body, ravaged by chemotherapy, was too weak and he went into renal failure. Chris died on the 10th of September, 10 years ago. Has time helped to heal the wound?
Losing a child is not something you ever get over. What I've always said is you get on with it. You get on with life, you get on with what you have to do. But there probably isn't a day that goes by that I don't think about him.
Today, his sunflower legacy lives on in haematology wards across the country and through the Sunflower Fund that Tina established after his death. Tina has spent every waking moment of the past 10 years trying to increase the number of donors on the bone marrow registry, because she says if you want to save lives, that's what you've got to do. Chris's sister Taryn was 11 when he was first diagnosed. Now she works at the fund. From the sidelines, she watched her mum put aside her grief to begin building a registry.
She just didn't stop. It wasn't like, I need my moment to mourn now and I need my moment to get my life sorted out. She was like, no, I need to get out there and help other people and other families.
Tina's efforts have borne fruit. There were only 800 donors when Chris fell ill. Today, there are 64,000 South Africans on the registry. Dr. Mike de Tooy is a clinical haematologist with a penchant for frogs at Constantiaberg Clinic.
Tina's an enormously enthusiastic person, and she is really the driving force behind all that effort.
And this is the epicenter of that effort. Here at the Sunflower Fund, the phones are ringing and potential donors are being assisted. For 10 years, Tina and her team have raised funds through schools, companies, and anyone who would listen. Bandana Day is tomorrow. It's a critical part of the drive, and the money raised helps pay towards blood tests.
Every donor that we recruit, we try and DR type. That costs R1,000 a test. We don't turn anyone away, but we do encourage people that if they're in a position to donate the cost to their test, they do that. But then anyone who cannot afford that, we sponsor the test fully. So we need funds. Obviously, if we recruit 100 people, that's R100,000. So it goes quite quickly.
Tina's target for the registry is 100,000 South Africans from each ethnic group, but she says there is a huge shortage of black, coloured and Indian donors.
In order to help one of our young black patients in a state hospital, we would have to find another matching black donor, because you're looking for somebody that shares the same heritage, the same background. And unless we have more donors coming forward, we're not finding those matches and we are losing those children. And it really, really is tragic.
So what does it actually take to become a donor? It sounds quite scary with needles and pain and bone marrow, but it's actually fairly simple and pretty painless. And all it takes is a call to this office here. The Sunflower Fund will direct you to the closest blood testing centre and register you on the South African Bone Marrow Registry, which is internationally linked. If you are matched to a patient, you will be called.
Anybody that is over the age of 18 and in good health can actually make that decision and commit to being a donor.
And it was one of those decisions that saved Eben Moret's life earlier this year. One day while jogging, he could no longer keep up with his fiancée. Dr. Mike du Toit was his doctor.
Well, on paper, I was almost dying, yeah. They did a bone marrow biopsy, and I had less than 5% working bone marrow left.
When Dr. du Toit gave Eben the diagnosis, he had just got engaged.
I told my fiancée back then that, you know, if I get bad news the next day, if this diagnosis is bad, then I'll marry her this Saturday. And that Saturday we got married.
He knew that without a donor, his chance at life was slim.
That was in the back of my head as well the whole time. You know, death is knocking at the door constantly. You've got this shadow hanging over you.
Eben couldn't find a match here in South Africa, and so several excruciating months went by. But he was very lucky because just 1 month before, a young man in Germany had decided to become a donor, and he was a perfect match. Eben's transplant in March was successful.
Please get on the registry, we need you. I mean, South Africa really needs you. We've got 60,000. A country like Germany has got 3 million. America's got 12 million.
So buy a bandana tomorrow or give the Sunflower Fund a call. And as they say, give a little and save a life.